All right, let's get into it. What turns a picture-perfect La Jolla life into a 5:30 a.m. double homicide? Today, we're unpacking the Betty Broderick case, the San Diego tragedy that still lives rent-free in pop culture and in our debates about love, power, and rage. Hey, it's Emma, and I'm in a reflective mood today. You know when a story is so messy and so human that it hurts to even look at? This is one of those. So, picture this: a successful attorney, a new marriage, a furious ex, and a gun. Big yikes. So, let's talk. In 1989, Betty Broderick shot and killed her ex-husband, Daniel T. Broderick III, and his new wife, Linda Colquena, in San Diego. The trials, the tapes, the tabloids, it was everywhere. Books, a TV movie, and later a 2020 miniseries kept throwing gasoline on a fire we still argue about. Was she a battered spouse pushed past the brink, or a calculating murderer who planned it out? The culture war over that question has never really cooled off. Before we dive into the courtroom drama, quick personal story. Years ago, I had a best friend. We were a total vibe. Brunches, birthdays, matching chaotic playlists. Trust was the brand. Then a stupid misunderstanding turned into a cold war. I thought she was trash-talking me to a guy I was dating. She thought I iced her out first. It spiraled. We stopped calling. Then came the text that read like legal briefs. Eventually, we sat down, said what hurt, and I realized the scariest thing in relationships is not the screaming. It is the silence while your story about someone calcifies into fact. We fixed it, but it taught me this: betrayal, or even just the feeling of it, can rewrite your entire personality. Which brings us back to Betty, because she did not fix it. She loaded it. Okay, let's move on. ELI 5 version. Betty, born in the late 1940s and raised strict Irish Catholic with Italian-American roots, was trained for one job: wife and mom. She married Dan in 1969. Dan was the golden boy, think Ivy League grind set. He secured an MD in 1970, then pivoted and earned a JD from Harvard in 1973. Wild flex. While he was in school, Betty sold Tupperware and Avon, did childcare, and kept the lights on. They had 5 kids, 1 tragically died days after birth, and 4 grew up in San Diego after the move in the mid-1970s. By the late 1970s and into the 90s, Dan became a star in plaintiff's medical malpractice. The rare MD and JD combo made him courtroom royalty, money, status, president of the San Diego Bar Association. Meanwhile, Betty's identity stayed yoked to home. Enter Linda Colquena, hired in the early 80s as Dan's legal assistant. She was young, Dutch-American, a former flight attendant. By 1983, Betty suspected an affair. Dan denied it then. Whether that romance started before the marriage ended is disputed, just saying. The marriage cracked. In 1985, Dan moved out. Divorce and custody battles got brittle. Betty's behavior spiraled, harassing voicemails in the hundreds, restraining order violations, even ramming a car into his door while the kids were inside. All documented in court. Big, dangerous escalation.
Fast forward to 1989. Betty bought a Smith & Wesson a month before Dan and Linda's wedding. Yes, before the wedding. Linda was scared enough that she told Dan to wear a bulletproof vest. He did not, but hired plainclothes security. The divorce finalized that year. Betty kept claiming that Dan's clout in San Diego law made it impossible for her to get fair representation and that she was cut out of money in custody. That claim was hers, not a court finding. But the power imbalance was real. He was a prominent attorney. She was financially and socially sidelined.
Then the morning, October 18th, 1989. Around 5:30 a.m., Betty used a key she got from her daughter Kim to enter Dan and Linda's home near Balboa Park. The couple was asleep. Shots rang out. Linda took 2 bullets, head and chest. Dan was shot in the chest and did not die instantly. Trial evidence showed Betty removed the bedroom phone or answering machine so no one could call for help. She later turned herself in, called her daughter Lee and Lee's boyfriend first, and never denied pulling the trigger. Her story was that Linda screamed, "Call the police." She panicked, and she fired.
Let's jump to the next thing, the courtroom. The first trial in 1990 ended hung. 2 jurors pushed for manslaughter because they did not see intent, so it was a mistrial. The second trial kicked off in 1991, with the same lead attorneys. The prosecution, led by Carrie Wells, argued planning and cited the gun purchase and the phone removal as receipts. The defense, Jack Early, leaned into battered spouse dynamics and extreme psychological pressure. Experts weighed in. Dr. Park Dietz, a forensic psychiatrist for the prosecution, emphasized narcissistic and histrionic traits, based in part on work by Dr. Melvin Goldsband. The defense psychologist, Catherine DeFrancesca, also saw histrionic features, with some narcissistic notes. None of this equals legal insanity. The second jury convicted her on 2 counts of second-degree murder, She was sentenced to 2 consecutive 15 to life terms plus 2 years for the gun.
Okay, pause, because this next part is everything. The big question, was Betty a battered spouse crushed by years of psychological warfare and humiliation, or was she a woman who planned a lethal revenge? My take, it's both more human and less romantic than either camp wants. I do think her identity was built on a 1960s promise: support your man, sacrifice now, you will be safe later. Then later arrived, and it looked like Linda in a wedding dress. That is a psychic earthquake. At the same time, the risk flags were neon: the harassment, the prior violence with the car, the gun purchase months before, the removed phone. These were not heat of passion flukes, they suggested preparation. So yes, profound emotional pain, and also yes, lethal agency. The law landed on second-degree murder, intentional but not premeditated first-degree. That middle lane tracks with the messiness here.
And can we talk about foreseeability? Linda feared violence enough to ask for a vest at the wedding. Security was hired. This was not random. If you work in threat assessment, that escalation pattern is textbook. It does not excuse it, but it explains why prevention matters. Alarms, restricted key access, phone lines that cannot be yanked easily. The what-ifs haunt this case.
Now, consequences. Betty stayed in prison from day one of the murders. Parole boards denied her in 2010 and again in 2017, citing lack of remorse and refusal to accept responsibility. Her next shot would have been 2022, but she didn't make it. She died in custody in 2026 at the California Institution for Women. Meanwhile, Dan and Linda are buried together at Greenwood Memorial Park in San Diego. That shared grave is a grim, quiet coda to a very loud story. Okay, so what else, you ask? The pop culture effect. The 2020 miniseries about Betty resurrected the case for a new generation. On one hand, I love a layered portrayal that shows systemic stuff: the 80s divorce courts, the gendered money gaps, the social shaming. On the other, we glamorize beautiful people in beautiful houses doing ugly things, and then we mistake fascination for truth. Entertainment compresses nuance. The reality is less cinematic and more tragic. 2 people died in their bed and 4 children lost their parents in a single morning. That is not dingeable. That is devastating. Let's dissect this for a sec. If you are listening because your own breakup feels like a personal apocalypse, I get it. But do not let silence write your story for you. Communicate before it calcifies. Get help. Therapy, a lawyer you trust, a friend who will tell you the truth. The Broderick saga is a masterclass in what happens when pain becomes a plan.
Oh, and speaking of drama, next time we're diving into another high-profile case where the twist is not who did it, but how the narrative flipped after the cameras left. You are not ready. Okay, we covered a lot. Life is messy, relationships are mussier, but curiosity's your map. I am Emma, and this was Emma Spills the Tea. Stay safe, stay curious, and do not let the drama drive.